Hi, this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast, and I'm Rachel Lancaster. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now is our time. My guest today is Lori Saitz, and she's a writer, a speaker, a broadcaster with a passion for using meditation and gratitude to change lives and help women achieve their goals. She's also the host of the Fine is a Four-Letter Word podcast. Welcome, Lori. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, Rachel.
So we're going to kick off. I would like to know about your own midlife reinvention. What happened to you to make you change direction and do what you do now?
Yeah, well, I guess that story starts a little bit back in 2014. I had run my first business for 11 years, and I couldn't scale it quite the way I wanted to. And so I ended up shutting it down. And at the same time, my mother was diagnosed with an acute form of leukemia and passed away about 8 weeks later. And as I was mourning the death of my business and my mother, I started thinking about, mortality like we do. And do I want to live the next 20 years the same way I lived the last 20? And what will I do differently? And it took me a few years of thinking about that. That's a big period of adjustment after, the passing of a parent, especially a mother, I think. And my identity had been completely tied up in that business. That was who I was. And so it took me a few years to kind of move through all of that emotion. And at the same time, at the time, my husband at the time was very supportive of all of that transition. And his mother passed away a couple years after that. And so we were helping each other through this transitionary time in both of our lives. And at the same time, our marriage was kind of, we loved and respected each other, but there wasn't any passion. There wasn't a whole lot of commonality, conversation to be had. We didn't really have much to say to each other anymore. And I reached a point where I said, all right, in my head, I'm thinking, I have to be the one to do this. I have to be the one to take the initiative. Everything is fine, but fine is not a way to go through life. Fine is surviving. It's not thriving. And so had the conversation, got the courage to even bring the topic up and have that conversation and say, this isn't serving either one of us. And and I think some of your listeners may be able to relate to the idea of that conversation didn't happen just one time. It happened 4 times before he heard what I was saying and we could really start moving forward with all of whatever we had to talk through and discuss and arrangements to make and things like that. It was the most difficult thing I have ever done.
So that was a hell of a lot of change, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And then I didn't just move out of our house. I moved all the way across the country because I needed some perspective. So I moved to California from Virginia, which is on the East Coast, and stayed there for a year. But, that really gave me the space, obviously the geographic space and the mental space to process through all of that change and start figuring out, who am I now? Because I had been with this person for my entire adult life, 30 years almost. So that was a major change, but necessary, because now I'm at a point in my life that I would have never gotten to had we stayed together. And he agrees that, this was really for the best, just still super difficult.
Yeah. So you still do think that that move was the right thing to do?
Yeah. So I stayed in California for a year and then I moved back to Virginia because this is home for me. But yes, I do still think that was the right thing to do. However, and that it's been a little more than 3 years. Those first 2.5 years was so much guilt. I had to process through all of this guilt because what could I have done differently? Am I making a mistake? You know, was there some way to make it work?
And did you come to the conclusion that there wasn't a way to make it work?
I came to the conclusion that this was the best thing for both of us because it's still hard emotionally because look at me. Because intellectually, I know that it's the best thing. I know it. I know it's the best thing for both of us, but there's still a piece that feels like, okay, but what if? And you can't live life that way because you can't live life by looking in the rearview mirror. You can only move forward. You can't change the past. You can't change anything that's happened in the past. So you have to go forward and look enthusiastically, I believe, move forward enthusiastically and with courage. That's where that courage piece comes in. And I think that's why so many women, people in general, really don't move off of this place where everything is fine because it's scary and it's uncomfortable and it hurts. And yet the reward of getting to fulfillment, fantastic, whatever word you want to use, is so worth it.
But yeah, you're right. Sometimes it is, however bad it is, it's easier to stay in the badness that we know.
Right.
Than to step hook, line, and sinker into something completely new that could be better or could be even worse. It's that better the devil you know than the devil you don't know, isn't it?
There you go.
That idea.
Right. The familiar, you get comfortable in the familiar.
And midlife is that time when I do think that like everything gets thrown up in the air. I mean, I'm divorced, but my divorce came a lot earlier. I was 35 when I got divorced. Okay. So I was at a very different life stage. So I kind of done that then.
Yeah.
But I know how hard it is. I know how excruciating it can be.
Yeah.
So how did you find the strength to move on and to create something different?
Yeah, I say there's no way I would have gotten through that. I don't think there's any way I would get through life in general without my friends. That friend support group. And it's interesting because after I made that move to leave my marriage, 4 other friends did it too. It's almost like they were waiting to see if I was going to combust into flames or whatever was going to happen.
Struck down by the devil.
Right. And that didn't happen. So they were like, oh, okay, I guess I can do it too now. But yeah.
And there's a lot of it in midlife. There's a lot of women who just go, okay, this is the way it's always been, but it's not the way I want it to always be.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that whole idea of our parents are passing away. They're reaching age, older age and passing away. Kids are growing up and moving out of the house to be independent. And yeah, we start looking at, is this how I want to live the rest of my life? I could have another, nobody knows how long we have. My mother was only 73. And so do you have another 5 years, 30 years, 14 days? We don't know. So what are you going to do with that time? Yeah, well, and I mean, any day. And what are you going to do with that time? How do you want that to look?
So were you intentional then about how you wanted the future to look, or has it evolved since you made the leap?
It's an evolution. Life is really an evolution. We can have a clear picture. And I love working with my clients to help them get clarity, because how can you move in, you have to have some clarity to be able to move forward with confidence. But that comes as an evolution. It's taking small steps. So Martin Luther King had a quote about not being able to see the whole staircase, but still taking the first step. That's what it's really all about, is keep moving forward. And as you move, more opportunity, more becomes clear. Staying stuck in that same place, you can't see anything. But if you take one small step in faith, then doors start opening, and you can take another step and another step. And that's how it works. A lot of times people are looking for what is their life purpose, as if it's going to show up on their door like an Amazon package. And and I don't believe that that's how it works. I believe it's a matter of taking those small steps, and then things start opening up.
Yeah, because if you stay still, then nothing's going to change, is it?
Nothing changes until something changes.
Yeah. And you got to do that change.
Right.
So you've built a whole new life for yourself. So what is it? What is it that excites you now and that creates the future for you? Because you've built something that we hope is going to last you a long time, because that's also the scary bit, isn't it? Because if we make the jump, how do we know that what we're going to build now is going to last long enough to keep us excited and happy long enough?
Yeah. Well, there are no guarantees in life, whether you stay or you leave, whatever it is, whether it's a marriage, a career, any situation. That safety, that comfort that you feel in staying is an illusion, because nothing is guaranteed to be the same forever. I mean, that's the whole premise of life, and is change. Nobody really likes it, but that's the constant in life, is change. So you have to take those steps and trust. And this is where it comes to getting quiet enough to hear your own inner truth, that own voice that you have inside of you. That is where your truth resides. No one else can tell you what your truth is. Only you know what that is. And the only way to access it is to get quiet and sit with yourself. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable sitting with themselves. They look for all kinds of distractions. And the only way to know what your truth is to get quiet. And sometimes people don't like to hear that truth, because that truth is going to tell you to go do something that is scary.
And why is it scary to get quiet?
It's because I think we know our answers. Like, I knew that marriage wasn't serving me for probably 10 years before I made a move. But everything was fine, and it was scary, and I didn't know what was going to be on the other side, and I was afraid to make that move. And again, it's just a matter of being comfortable where you are. But and distracting yourself from no, that's not really what I'm hearing. That's not really what that voice is telling me. I don't know why it's scary. I think because as we said earlier, it's the unknown. Everything here is not terrible. I mean, my relationship was not terrible. He's an amazing person. We still, everything's amicable, but that's what makes it harder. It wasn't terrible. And a lot of people I talk to, a lot of women, are at this place where they're looking at their life, and from the outside, everything looks amazing from the outside. So they're looking at it and thinking, well, my gosh, why can't I be happy with this? There must be something wrong with me. And then they start questioning their own judgment. But there's nothing wrong. The challenge, the issue is their soul is crying out for growth, for expansion.
So what process do you take people through to be able to get quiet and hear that voice?
Within my program, it's a trilogy for success. So trilogy is gratitude and finding gratitude, looking and finding gratitude in everything, every situation. There's always gratitude, no matter how bad it looks at the onset. You can find gratitude. And that's, for a lot of people, something that you have to learn. That's something I had to learn. I wasn't, I was not a naturally grateful person, but, but there are some exercises that you can do. And actually, one of my mentors had me reading the book, The Science of Getting Rich. Chapter 7 is on gratitude. And he had me read that chapter every day, twice a day, once in the morning, once at night, for 30 days. And it kind of, yeah, to really fix that concept in my head. And, it took a while. It wasn't immediate at the end of the 30 days, but then being able to find gratitude in every situation instead of being a victim. A lot of people like to complain and criticize. And let's turn that around and find the gratitude instead. And when you catch yourself complaining, because we all do, it's human, then adding on, this is an exercise I do with people, is adding on that, but I'm grateful for, and constantly turning it to gratitude. The second component of the trilogy for success is connections. And that's connections with your friends, with your family, with your community, and most importantly, as we've touched on, with yourself. And one of my favorite ways to connect with that inner voice within yourself is meditation. And so I take people through, I create customized gratitude meditations and visualization and use that as the tool for getting quiet enough to hear your own inner voice. And then that third component of the trilogy for success is courage, because you can be super grateful and you can be very well connected to that inner voice, and you still have to find the courage to do the thing that you need to do.
So meditation is I know it's a big part of your life. Mm-hmm. So what does your meditation practice look like on a daily basis?
I wake up in the morning and do a meditation first thing every morning, because that way first of all, I'm still kind of halfway between sleep and awake. And in terms of brain waves, that's where your brain is at alpha, the alpha brain wave, which is, again, it's that middle place between awake and asleep. And your subconscious is open to suggestion. And so if you're doing a meditation, you're really tapping into that subconscious place. And that's where we change anything. There's a lot of talk about people wanting to change their outer world. The only way to do that is to change your inner world and to change what's going on in your subconscious. And that's where you do it, in that alpha and theta brainwaves. That's a whole other conversation of brainwaves, but that place where you're not quite awake and your subconscious is very open to suggestions. So if you can tap into into that place and get into a meditation where you're just calming your thoughts. And one of the biggest misconceptions I hear all the time from people is, well, I'm not good at meditation because I can't turn off all the thoughts in my head. I call that puppy mind. And no one can turn off all the thoughts in your head. That's why meditation is called a practice. You practice it. Like, think of a baby learning to walk, right? They don't just stand up and bolt across the room. They have to fall down several times and get up and fall down and get up. And it's a process. And so you get better and better. Maybe you have to bring yourself back to your breathing or the sound of the meditation teacher's voice or whatever it is. 10 times a minute in the beginning from the thoughts, but then it gradually becomes 6 times a minute and expands. But I don't think the thoughts ever go away. That's really part of the process of meditation. So I do a meditation first thing in the morning, and most of the time I will do some kind of meditation at night when I'm falling asleep. Again, because I'm tapping into that space where you're halfway between awake and asleep. And personally, I like guided meditations. So this is another thing. People think meditation is sitting quietly in complete silence with, cross-legged on a mat for hours at a time. And that none of that. You could do that for sure. Personally, I like a guided meditation. I'm just recently getting into longer ones, but I started with 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and did that for years, just that small amount of time. And that amount is better than no amount, and what you're doing is you're rewiring your brain. You're rewiring those neural pathways in your brain. So you might not see, if we're talking about visualizing goals, for example, those goals may not manifest or come to a fruition, a week after you start meditating. What will happen right away is you will start feeling a sense of calm and groundedness and peace, regardless of what's going on around you. That can start happening immediately. As soon as you come out of a meditation, you're going to feel more calm and grounded. And then, if a day gets really crazy, and this doesn't happen a lot for me because I am typically so grounded already from doing this practice for a while. Going into a meditation, or just breathing, just, putting your hand on your heart and breathing for a minute to calm your nervous system and bring yourself back to center.
We can get so lost, can't we? I think I see it often. I see it, I think, most at the moment with my mom, because she gets so lost in sort of worry and things happening, and she can't step back. And I do meditate, and I try to do 10 minutes most mornings. Mm-hmm. And as you say, I do find it very grounding, and it gives me that ability to stand back instead of getting quite so caught up. Right. I think it's also a factor of having gone through menopause, because I don't have the raging estrogen, messing around with my emotions and stuff as well. So I think there's an element of that. But I do find that the meditation, it grounds me, and I generally have a better day if I have meditated than if I haven't. And it's interesting, it's that getting that first thing in the morning as well. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's often lots of pressures on you, things you've got to do. But I think any of us, we can find 10 minutes, can't we? I think most of us can find 10 minutes.
Yeah. The other thing is, when I hear people say I don't have time to meditate, my answer to that is meditation makes you more effective. Because you are more calm and grounded, you are better able to make rational decisions. You're better able to focus. It improves your memory. It improves your brain chemistry. I mean, so much research and science behind how it affects your brain chemistry and your ability to function. And so it actually gives you time, because it makes you more focused and effective and efficient throughout your day. And so, I love quotes. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that if you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. It's that same concept of spend 10 minutes in the morning essentially sharpening the axe, and it saves you time later, because a task that might take you 2 hours to do maybe only takes you one because you're more focused. And so I find it as an investment versus an expenditure.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And what has it enabled you to do in your life?
That calm and groundedness. I mean, coming from that place and making decisions, living your life from that place. I see so many people running around frustrated, anxious, worry. I want to come back to that whole concept of worry in a second, but that's not a good place to live from. Like, it just doesn't feel good.
It's not good health-wise either. It's really not good for our adrenal glands and our hormonal balance and all of that. It's just not good, full stop, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. And so if meditation can help you with all of those issues, why wouldn't you spend 10 minutes? And I say this, I learned how to meditate. My mom took my brother and me to a meditation course when I was 10 years old.
Really?
So I have had this background.
Wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
So young.
Seriously, one of the best gifts she could have ever given us.
Mm.
And then I didn't use it for 35 years.
Well, yeah, because you were that's a load of rubbish. I'm not going to use that.
Exactly. So I understand that what we're saying is not, I've been in the place too where I'm like, yeah, I hear you, and I'm still not going to do it.
Yeah.
Until
I know it's good for me, but sod that.
Right. Until you get to a place where you're ready for it.
Mm. Wow, how lovely that your mum took you. I think that's lovely. Even if you didn't use it for 35
But,
years.
It was floating in the back always as part of, I knew it. I had it to fall back on. I would get into meditating for a week, and then I would not be consistent, and I'd drop it for several years, and then I'd come back to it. And it was always, it was always in the back of my mind, and such a great foundation. Mm. The interesting thing somebody just pointed this out to me very recently was that when I really got back into being consistent with meditation was after she passed away. And they said, so she set you up for when she wasn't here. And I just was like, I burst into tears. I'm like, I never thought of it that way. Yes.
She gave you a tool to cope.
Yeah. Right. Who knew? Like I never recognized that until that person pointed it out. Mm. Yeah.
Mm. Wow. So was she a lifelong meditator?
No, she did.
She didn't either. She showed it to you and then she didn't do it.
I don't know 100% because we never really talked about it. I don't know that she was consistent with it. I think she struggled too in terms of doing it consistently. Although she may have had a consistent practice that she just never talked about.
Mm. And I know that, gratitude is, as you've talked about, it's part of your trilogy for success, but you're very passionate about its ability to transform us, aren't you? So
yes.
Why should we all be thinking about gratitude?
Because gratitude is one of the highest vibration emotions you can have. So as humans, everything in our universe, human or not, is made of energy. And everything vibrates at a different level. Like the reason a table is solid is because it's vibrating at a level that makes it solid matter, and as are we. So this whole idea of everything is energy, gratitude is one of the highest vibration emotions you can feel. So when you can get yourself into this place of feeling gratitude, your energy level is higher. I mean, you can feel it just from the most basic standpoint of you feel better when you are feeling gratitude, when you're feeling joy, when you're feeling love, when you're feeling appreciation, versus when you're feeling frustrated and angry and overwhelmed. Those are the lower level vibrations. They just don't feel good. It doesn't feel good to live in that space. And so if you can get yourself into living in a space where you're feeling gratitude and appreciation and joy and freedom, it just feels better. Why wouldn't you want to feel better? I don't understand the people who like living in that place of anger and fear. And I know they will argue that they don't have a choice. And I will argue all day long that you do have a choice. Everyone has a choice. We are always making choices about how to feel. And that's not to say, because I don't want to minimize that if you are feeling sad, if someone you love passes away, yeah, you're going to feel sad. I'm not saying don't feel sad. Don't feel the emotions. We're human. We need to feel the emotions. And at the same time, reach just one rung up the ladder to feel, you want to feel better. And not dwell in those negative emotions for your entire existence. A lot of people just live there in regret or resentment, and that's just not a pleasant place.
I'm going to step out on a little cultural branch now, because I know that a lot of my listeners, if they're in the UK, we have a very different approach to this than my listeners in the States, for example. But you see, I used to live in the States, and my son went to nursery and kindergarten in New York. And so I saw the impact of the American way on my son. And I felt it I lived in Manhattan for 3.5 years, and I loved it. And I've always been very open. I'm a very open person. And the older I get, the more open I get, because the more interested and excited I am about life and things to learn. And the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So I'm always curious. I'm always open to possibility. And I've read loads and loads of American self-help books. But I know that some of my listeners and some people who don't listen, because I'm too woo-woo or whatever I am, they struggle with this, because it's interesting. I don't think she'll listen to the podcast, but I had a lovely review about my book, but I wrote it in Americanese. And she got a bit annoyed about it being in Americanese and not in British English. So I did it the Chicago Manual of Style rather than the British one. And I did that very consciously, because I think that there is more of a tradition of my kind of book in America, where there is more positivity than there is here. We're a bit moaning Minnie over here. Sorry,
Yes,
Brits listening, but we really are, and we like to moan. And you've only got to look at our newspapers, they are very negative. So sometimes I feel like this kind of little, I don't know, this little solitary beacon over here, sort of going, gratitude, meditation, positivity.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all going, what the heck is she talking about? But it's an interesting thing for me, because I feel I can straddle both cultures.
Yeah.
And I can understand both. And so I can see the skepticism of the people over here. And yet I love your approach. And I know fundamentally that you are right. So my moaning Minnies over on the British side are just going to have to listen and suck it up. And I think that hopefully, because they found my podcast, they're into this sort of thing. But it is, we can change our thoughts. We can change the way we feel about life. And I know I've listened to your podcast, and you've talked about, there was a lady I was listening to who had used gratitude to cure herself in 30 days.
Yes.
Of all sorts of symptoms. And I can imagine with my skeptical British brain going, well, that's impossible. But actually, if you think about it and you listen, I listened to her talking about that, and it's totally possible and totally feasible. And again, it's about being open to that possibility, isn't it? So I've just gone off on a little cultural branch there to explain, but it's really interesting to me, the difference in the cultures, and how, some people will listen to you and think, what's she on? And other people will think, that makes complete sense.
Yes. And I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that cultural perspective, because I am aware of that. And it's funny because my husband, I don't know how to refer, I don't like calling him ex, but he used to accuse me of living life through rose-colored glasses. And I would say, it's so much better this way. It's not, I'm just happier. Why does it matter? And so I would challenge the people who are thinking that that's, rubbish and they can't change their thoughts. But what if you could? And what if you tried it for a week? What if you were open to the possibility? And if you don't want to, we argue for our own limitations all the time. If you are happy living how you are living with those thoughts that you're thinking, keep them. And if you'd like to something better, different, better, here's another possibility is all.
It's about experimenting with difference, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. I'm really into health and fitness and nutrition. And I work out in the weight room. I'm there typically 5 days a week. And I've been playing around with my macros, my macronutrients, so my food, how much protein, how much carbohydrates, how much fat I eat each day, and I track it. And it's an experiment to see what would happen if I put protein at 40%. 40% of my intake is protein a day. And what would happen? And I've just been playing with it and seeing the differences of what happens in the body. And it's the same with using gratitude or not. Play around with it. See how it feels, what happens.
So once when I talked about having a gratitude practice, somebody said, well, you know what that means, but can you explain what does it mean to have a gratitude practice?
I think it means different things to different people. Some people love keeping a journal, a gratitude journal, and they record 3 or 5 or 10 things every night before they go to sleep of what they're grateful for during that from the day. And that's fantastic. I personally just don't do that, but there's no reason not to do it. And a gratitude practice could be that. It could be sitting in the morning and thinking about what you're grateful for that is coming to you through the day. So that's almost like setting yourself up as a visualization. You're setting your intention for the day. Gratitude practice could be, we just celebrated American Thanksgiving last week. And I know a lot of families have the tradition of going around the table and sharing what they've been grateful for throughout the past year. I mean, that gratitude practice could really look like anything. I know some families every night, and especially if they have smaller children, and I didn't have any children, but I would have done this if I did have some, of sitting around the table every night and everybody saying something that they were grateful for from the day. A gratitude, I mean, it looks like whatever you want it to look like.
It's interesting because it has very strong roots in the different faiths, doesn't it?
Yes.
But often when we increasingly live for a lot of us, I mean, certainly me, in a faithless life or a faithless society, this is one element, one aspect, which is actually a very powerful aspect that may have originally come from an original faith, but which can be used in a completely secular way, which I think makes it pretty powerful.
It's really humanity. It's based in humanity more than I would think a religion. Which I think when it comes down to it, a lot of religion is based in just the theory of humanity, being kind to fellow humans and to yourself and doing the right thing. And gratitude is that natural place of our souls want to express joy and goodness.
So tell me about a favorite episode on your podcast, a favorite guest and what their story was.
It's interesting that, it's interesting that you mentioned Jennifer Garman is the woman who was talking about the, how she healed herself in 30 days using gratitude and meditation and gratitude, meditation and visualization and neuroplasticity. So I love her story. I love that story that she tells because it is so powerful. Such a powerful testament to gratitude. I mean, this is like picking one of your favorite children, right? Because
I know, it's always a difficult question.
Try.
Go on, try.
So many great guests with everybody's story is just so fascinating. There was a woman on one of the earliest episodes. I think it was episode 3 or 4. It's called, what is it called? Pain, Passion, and Prostitutes or something. Her story is, it's a really shocking title. I'm really good at copywriting and finding good headlines, but some of the stuff that she's had to overcome, because all of my guests tell their stories of being stuck in a place where everything was fine and finding the courage to move off of it. Mm. And her story was really shocking in that it involves prostitution, not her being a prostitute, her ex-husband. And not to ruin the surprise of it all, but she found out, that he was basically sleeping with crackhead prostitutes. And, I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, oh, well, thank God that's not my life. But there were pieces in there, and there's elements in every single episode, as I'm sure there are with yours, that somebody can relate to. Mm. And this is a woman who runs $1 million business, and she didn't realize that he was stealing money from her, from their personal business account. And she said, I just felt so stupid. Like, how could I have not realized this money was missing? She's super smart. She's a very savvy business person, but even she didn't see what was happening in her personal life and just felt like, how could I have been so dumb? And that is the piece that I think everyone can relate to. We feel like some situation, or how could I have not seen this? Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to, we are all so much more similar than different.
So based on everything that you've gone through in your own sort of midlife transformation, what would you most like midlife women to know?
There's nothing wrong with you, and you are not alone. We are all in this together, and that's what we're doing here. I mean, reach out and share what you're going through with other people so that we can all hold each other's hands and help each other. I like to say that, in my program, I hold your hand and I kick your butt at the same time in a gentle, kind, loving way. But also, a lot of times we need somebody to push us off the cliff and hold our hand as we're flying through the air. And nobody crashes on the rocks below. Everybody lives. It's just a little scary on the way down. But yeah, you don't have to do this alone. We're all in this together.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, follow, and share it. Also, giving a 5-star review really helps get the word out. You'll find the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can get my book, Magnificent Midlife, Transform Your Middle Years, Menopause, and Beyond. Make the very best of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.